Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to another edition of Fundamentalist Fails, where we go through some of the weird and wacky religious people out on the interwebs, and we have a look and see what they're doing and how they're reacting. This one was a bit of an odd one because it's less somebody famous, and because I'm an equal opportunity counter apologist, it's sort of just a very small channel. I believe he's sort of only got 1.2k subscribers, but it did kind of interest me because I left a comment which he sort of responded to. So I thought I would take him through why they are weak apologetics. The man's name is David Yarbrough, who I've never heard of. You probably shouldn't have heard of him, but I think that sort of on some investigation, we need to start sort of pushing back against even the weak apologetics, especially the weak apologetics that come through. So I will go through all of it, but just first off, I would like to cover a couple of things. Left-handed Jedi, get well soon. Hope you feel better. It sucks. In the chat, you mentioned that you have a chest crud. That sucks, mate. I totally get you. Yeah, big props to Left-handed Jedi, friend of the channel. I will not wait for you. No, absolutely not. I refuse. No, Justin's great. No, welcome, Justin. It's great to see you. But just before we go on, I do have a few things coming up. I do have to put some work in and do some more clips, so that should be coming up. And Beheaded Kamikaze, I'm fantastic. It's Friday. This is my favorite day where I get to go through a apologist video and just critically disseminated. I love doing that. I like breaking things down into their components and finding the logic within them, or not, as the case may be. So I've got some clips I've got to really do some introductions to and things like that, and post. That should be great. Hey, Robin, so good to see you. It's not Thursday. This is a Friday. How dare you, sir? How dare you? Don't you gaslight me. So I've also got the big news was the election coming up. Now, aimbot returned, if you're unaware. My segment aimbot, which is am I morally bankrupt or them, where I examine morality in Reddit. I think that the premiere, the very first return of aimbot, was on the wrong day because of the presidential election. We will be covering that on Sunday. Barnaby, you're back as Pinworm. All right, I'm cool with that too. Hello Pinworm, so good to see you. And Beheaded, so good to see you as well, mate. But that's going to be crazy. So I hope you can join me for the debate dissection, Saturday night Eastern time, Sunday morning Australian time, where we'll be going through the debate with, of course, the lovely Ember, the amazing and lovely Ember, and we're going to be going through and breaking down the debate for the madness that it was. I've already seen it, so it isn't going to be a live reaction. To be honest with you, I think a live reaction would have been good because I was absolutely frustrated with the whole thing. But that aside, so that's coming up. I hope you can join me for that stuff. And I promise I'll try to get some more videos out because I have been sort of falling off a bit lately, and I do admit that. So I do apologize. My bad. I've been a bad boy, so I'm going to put some bad marks in the chat. Okay, so who is David Yarbrough? So he basically is just a small content creator, and I just came across his channel randomly, and he sort of has these response videos. So I think it's only fair that we do a response to the response and sort of point out where his logic is failing. He's not very big, but that's okay. I more just interacted briefly, and somebody pointed out God of the Gaps, and he didn't seem to understand what God of the Gaps is. So this time I did message him in the comments and sort of say, hey, I'll do a stream on it, and maybe I can educate you on what God of the Gaps actually is and why we say it. So yeah, I really want to do sort of a more educational one this time. Hopefully we can sort of show what the problems are. But first off, what I'll go through where's his channel? I'll just sort of show his channel. He's sort of very, very small, but we kind of got to nip this stuff in the bud. I'll just get his channel up. Yeah, sorry, it's called Elevated Reflections, which, we're going to see how elevated this actually is in actual fact. So this is his channel, Elevated Reflections. And now I'm only showing this for information. I don't want anyone to attack anybody or go after anybody. That's not my intention at all. All it is I'm just showing sort of what he's doing. He's a pastor in Bridge Fellowship in Texas. A heart for helping people find their kingdom purpose. I'm not sure. I believe that's sort of their kingdom purpose is God's purpose for them, which is kind of weird that you're not helping them find their purpose as they choose. You're helping them find what your belief's purpose is, which is really weird. You'll find a blend of sermons, biblical expositions, daily devotionals. Join me in delving the depth of the Bible. Yeah, I probably won't, but yeah, I mean, he's only got 1.3K subscribers, but still, it's one that I came across, and I sort of, Bridge Fellowship, I wasn't familiar with them. So, what is Bridge Fellowship? This is the Bridge Fellowship that they're part of. Let's blow it up. So that we step forward in God's call to plant the church. We believe the Bible to be the inspired, only infallible, authoritative word of God. And this is what makes him a fundamentalist. So whenever you're sort of saying, hey, that this holy book is utterly infallible, utterly incapable of being wrong, that's when you're a fundamentalist. Because if that is the case, then you've got to believe in the flood, that the flood actually contravening all sort of science that we know. You believe in the flood, you believe in this doomsday apocalypse kind of thing. There really is, it's the infallibility of the Bible that's the problem kind of thing. And big shout out to Alex and It's Probing Time coming into the chat. Hey, good to see you. Pastors like this before there and others on skirt the line. Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. I really do. It's just, I don't know where they all come from. I don't know why they're suddenly popping up lately. Maybe they've always been there and they're only just learning how to use, electronic media. Maybe that's the case. I don't know, but they're popping up. They believe in Jesus, that's fine. They believe in resurrection, that's fine. Spiritual unity. And this is the thing that got me. Okay, so as most of you might know, I have a background in sort of a corporate world. I started off technical support, did sort of, accounts and complaints and all these sort of customer-facing corporate sort of service positions. So when I see an asterisk, like there's something about an asterisk, the small print, that we kind of ignore. And I really don't ignore it. I really I find myself drawn to it. Not if it's a huge wall of text, of course, everybody ignores that, but sort of the asterisk down the bottom. I always remember one of our internet providers was famous for their asterisks. One of the smaller ones, I didn't work for them, but they always had an asterisk with a qualifier down the bottom. Like, for instance, they would say, hey, we cover 90% of Australia, and then it would have an asterisk down the bottom saying 90% of populated areas. And it's like, that's a big difference in Australia, where there's a ton of desert where nobody lives, right? Like that. And if you're Australian, you'll probably know who I'm talking about. They were famous for their sort of subtext that they hid down the bottom with a little asterisk to say, hey, here's the qualifier. For a detailed description of foundation beliefs, we affirm the Baptist Faith and Message 2000. Oh, hello. Crappy weather. Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry to hear that, mate. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. That sucks. Detailed description of foundational beliefs reaffirm the Baptist and faith and message. Okay, so what is that? I didn't know, so I looked it up as per usual, like what I do. The Baptist Faith and Message 2000. Now, I want to skip past a lot of this. A lot of it is just the standard, Christ, scriptures, truth, that kind of thing. Just very, very basic stuff. But we get down to certain things like, man is a special creation of God. He created them male and female. Yeah, the gift of gender is thus part of the good God's creation. No, gender is the outward presentation of your sex. It's not like nothing. God didn't say, hey, you have to wear a dress if you're a woman. That isn't something that God gave. Like we kind of just made it up. I don't know why you would say that, but you're going to see where this is going. The purpose of grace, the church, we centered gospels, that's all fine. What I want to get down is the kingdom. The kingdom of God includes both his general sovereignty over the universe and his particular kingship. It's those who willfully acknowledge his king. Okay, no worries. Nothing sus. Is there anything sus yet? I think I want to go. Here we go. This is where it turns dark, and I mean dark. So strap in, and all Christians are on obligation to seek to make the will of Christ supreme in our own lives and human society. So stop a second and think what that means. Basically, they're saying the will of my religious figure, the will of my deity, will be made supreme in human society, above the wants of people, above democracy, above anything else, the will of that being. That is horrible. Means and methods for an improvement in society and the establishment of righteousness among men can be truly and permanently helpful only when they are rooted in the regeneration of the individual by the saving grace in Jesus Christ. So yeah, it's basically saying, hey, if this isn't based in Jesus, it's not good for society at all. And Robin, thank you so much. It's good to see you. It's so good to see you. I was going to go and drop into your stream, but I was running a bit late. I do apologize. Robin recently had a stream with Kentucky Atheist. They do sort of politics talk. And I do like to watch it before I come on here, either that or transposition, one of the two. But I was running late today, so I didn't get to either, unfortunately. But that's okay. That's all right. So when it goes on, in the spirit of Christ, Christians should oppose racism, every form of greed, selfishness, vice, and all forms of sexual immorality, including adultery, homosexuality, and pornography. So they're basically just bigots against the homosexuals and the LGBTQI. I mean, it's great that you work for the needy, the abused, the aged, the helpless, and the sick, but you're still bigots. Every Christian should seek to bring industry, government, and society as a whole under the sway of the principles of righteousness, truth, and brotherly love. They're basically saying that they're out to make entire society underneath the church. It's actually, and I'm not even going to go into the family. It is composed of persons relating to one another by marriage, by adoption. Marriage is the uniting of one man and one woman, kind of thing. So yeah, anti-gay. Yeah, and I'm not saying that you have to go out and do anything. I'm just saying this is why we call them fundamentalists, because they don't believe in equality. They don't believe in the sort of the democracy and freedom comes from the will of the people. They don't believe in a mandate from the people. They believe in a mandate from God, and that God should be supreme over all of these things. And of course, by extension, the church should be supreme over all of these things. We're talking about a theocrat. So that's actually really scary, that is the Baptist message. So what's called Baptist faith and message. So that's their standard message, which is horrifying. Like, what are you doing? That's something that you would see in an extremist Islamic thing. That is horrifying. So yeah, this guy, Elevated Reflections. I don't think there's anything elevated about him. I think that he's not elevated. He's not illuminated. He's basically very bigoted and prejudicial against those people in our society. And just to annoy him, if he's watching, I put up a rainbow flag just to annoy him, because these people are part of our society as well. You all of them, they try to say, well, it's us and them. It's us and the LGBTQI. Them. They're not them. They're us. We are the same. They're a part of the society. They're allowed a voice as well. And I don't see any reason why your voice should be louder than theirs. You're just saying, hey, I've got an imaginary friend that with a bigger club. Well, tough. You can believe that all you want, but their voice is just as relevant. And you don't get a special spot in our society because you claim to have a big, bad imaginary friend. Doesn't work like that. You can make claims all you want, unless you can actually show it is the case. It's tough. Just like it's tough if I say, hey, we've got a dragon over my shoulder that's going to breathe fire on you if you keep doing it. No, it doesn't matter what I'm saying. It matters what is actually true. So, and that's what he seems to have a lot of problems with. So I'll switch to the actual video and we shall get started. So he's basically doing a commentary on this video kind of thing. So we're going to go through that and see. I might just stop and start again, just so I'm sure I've got the sound on this thing on. I'm not sure if I put on the sound. I think I did. Yeah, okay, yeah, I got the sound on. Okay, beautiful. Well, that's a good full screen. I like that. Interesting. That's not full screen. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So yeah, they really do take the fun out of fundamental. What am I doing? What is this? What?
The origins of the universe. That is the biggest question of all. Now, why would I say that? Because
okay, so the title of the video and what he's going to be going on about is one question that Christians can answer and atheists can't. And he's going to claim it's the origins of the universe. Now, and he gives an answer to the origins of the universe. That answer is God done it. Now, I can give an answer as well. Natural processes. I've just answered the question. The important part is not the answer. He's going to wind up to, oh, but they can't answer it. The important part is not the answer. It's really important to understand this. It doesn't matter if you can answer or whether you can't. The important part is how you show that answer is in fact true. The important part is how you got to that answer, not what the answer is. So, and plus, I think that he's confused between what an atheist is and what a scientist is. I think he thinks, well, scientists can't answer that question, so atheists can't either. No, you can have somebody who's an atheist that's spiritual and say, hey, it was the force or some kind of spiritual energy at the start of the universe, or, some spiritual energy created the universe. As long as you don't believe in a God, you're an atheist. That does not mean that you automatically follow the scientific consensus on Big Bang Theory. Like, you've got to understand that an atheist is someone that doesn't believe in a God. It doesn't mean that they believe in all the scientific theories that have been put out there about the formation of the universe. So, yeah, scientists would say, hey, we don't know how the universe originally formed. All we've got is the Big Bang, which is the rapid expansion of the universe after the presumed beginning. But my point is that he's sort of saying, hey, atheists can't answer that. And I'm saying, yeah, we can. It's just that we choose not to because we don't know. Right? So let's go through a bit and I'll sort of explain why that's important.
If God spoke everything into creation, if he's that all powerful, if he is that kind of a God.
If the operative word there is if. How do you show that's actually the case? You're saying if he spoke everything into existence, yeah, and if magical fairies used pixie dust to create it. If is the operative word there. You can't say, well, if this happened, and then treat it like it's a fact. No, that's not how anything works.
Then the virgin birth of Jesus, the perfect life of Jesus, the fact that Jesus is 100% God, 100% man.
I did the math on that one. It doesn't add up. Having something 100% one thing and 100% another thing, that, I'm sorry, I checked your math twice. It does not add up. I'm sorry, you can't have 200%. Like, I'm sorry. No.
Death, burial, resurrection, ascension of Jesus, those are all child's play compared to speaking the universe into creation. If this is such a big issue, then we need to be talking about that today. And hey, we've got here.
So the first thing I want to point out is that the first thing he runs into is something called an argument from consequence, right? So how does this work? Well, you know what? I'm gonna go through and maybe sort of use a board to show you. You know, just do a few pictures. I saw a software guy doing it and it looked cool, so I'm gonna try and do it. So, argument from consequence. You've got Happy here. You've got Mr. Man, and he's saying sort of if I don't win, my wife will leave. Whoop. She'll leave. Okay, so if I don't win, my wife will leave, right? So you're basically saying the consequences of this not happening or this happening, or you know, the consequences of a loss means bad things. Does that mean he automatically wins? No, it doesn't. He doesn't automatically wins because his wife will leave him. So if you're looking into the past and saying, I must have won, I must have won, or my wife will leave me, you're basically saying, well, the current logic is impinging on that, right? So the question is, does this person have a wife? It then becomes a question of current states of affairs. So you're basically saying that the word of Jesus Christ is true. You're assuming that up front, and then you're saying, if God didn't speak the thing into existence, then the word of Jesus Christ can't be true. It's a consequence, and that's something that you don't want to happen. So I don't want my wife to leave me. Wife to leave. Whoop. I don't want my wife to run out. So therefore, 3 dots, therefore, I won. Right? You don't want your wife to leave. Therefore, you won, or you will win. Right? It doesn't actually make sense. It's called an argument from consequence. Any consequence is not a argument for the state of affairs being true. It just isn't. It's like saying, well, if I don't win the lottery, I won't be able to pay my bills. Not being able to pay your bills has no impact on whether you lose the lottery or win the lottery. It doesn't have an impact. It just doesn't. So that's the first mistake, argument from consequence.
Morgan and Richard Dawkins back at it again, and they are talking about this. So let's jump in this conversation and listen to what they've got to say about the origins of the universe and faith in God. This is really good. Check this out.
Of God.
Okay, so first thing that occurs to me, and I know I'm going through this step by step. This is what I do. I will pick it apart. So if I'm going too slowly, really sorry, but there's a lot wrong that's said. For a start, and this is more at Piers Morgan than David Yarbrough. I'm sorry, Yarbrough. I'm sorry, I mispronounced his name. Yarbrough here. Like, why are they asking Dawkins about the origin of the universe? Is the first thing. Like, why? He's not a cosmologist. He's not a cosmogonist. He's basically an evolutionary biologist. He only deals with biology, and biology, it already has living things there. I don't understand why they'd be going to somebody like him. Go to Lawrence Krauss or somebody like that. I also want to say this man has 1,839 unread YouTube messages. That's insane. Wow, you don't check your comments? I don't know. He obviously does, but wow.
Because we had a long chat about this last time. I do believe, for what it's worth, I do believe in God. I do believe in an afterlife. I find it comforting. I also find, as I said to you last time, I find it explains things which are otherwise completely inexplicable.
Does it? Does it explain things? If you say God did it, how does that explain how God did it? Like okay, he spoke it into existence. How does that work? Are you really getting an explanation? Are you? Because you're basically saying, hey, this mysterious figure that we don't know anything about did something that we don't know how it worked. It's not actually explaining it. It's giving a sort of band-aid answer, just a thing that you can trot out. It doesn't actually give an explanation if you think about it. Just as I could say, well, how did the universe start? Natural processes. Just natural processes. How does that work? Well, I don't have to give an explanation if you don't. I can just say natural processes.
And we had a guest on recently, Professor Stephen C. Meyer, who's a prominent believer in intelligent design, or what he calls the God hypothesis.
Yeah, so Meyer, I don't think he's a physicist or a cosmogonist either. I think Stephen Meyer is from memory. I can't remember. Is he I think he's a historian? Yeah, he's a historian. So Stephen C. Meyer is a historian, a author. Like, he's not actually any kind of, he's got a Bachelor of Science with a double major in physics and earth science. I mean, I suppose he does have physics, but he's not a cosmologist. Like, just because you have a degree in physics doesn't get you to the point of, so cosmology is sort of talking about the universe, the stellar bodies, stellar stuff, suns, planets, moons, things like that. Cosmogony is the origin of the cosmos. It's basically how it all started. And just because you did a degree in physics does not give you any kind of authority in the origin of the universe. It doesn't. Physics, its origin of universe and Big Bang is such a specialized field. I don't know why you'd be turning to a historian with a major in physics to answer that question.
He watched our last interview that you and I had, and this is what he said about it.
Dawkins wants to portray theistic belief as if it's equivalent to belief in fairies. And
it has the same evidence. It has the same scientific evidence as belief in fairies. That's the whole point. that if it had more evidence for it scientifically, you would show it, but you don't. You never do. All that Stephen Meyer does is he tries to pick apart current theories, badly I might add, because he never actually manages to provide anything that would convince anybody that they're actually untrue. But they never actually present any kind of scientific evidence for their own, hypothesis that God did all of this stuff. This is the thing. Just as somebody who believes in fairies could say, hey, there's a problem with the Big Bang model. Someone who believes in fairies could say that. Someone who believes in God can say, hey, there's a problem with the Big Bang model. Each of them, they're both not presenting any evidence for their own hypothesis. All they're doing is trying to pick holes in the one that is already there. So yeah, it is kind of on the same level as far as science is concerned. I know that religious people say, well, our belief is special because it has this special book and it has a history and it has all of these things. That doesn't make it any more true than any other claim. This is the problem. We've got to start saying, how do we get to those like, just like the fairy person, you've provided an answer. The question is how we get to that answer. How do you show that that is in fact the case? That's the question. Maximiliano, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Maximiliano Visha, people, friend of the channel, awesome person. And we have Evil Toe, Peter Guns, unapologetically, Chrissy, Big Thig, Flying Wayne, Uncle Charlie. Congratulations, everybody. Winners all. Winner, chicken dinner. There you go. Thank Maximiliano for that one. Thank you so much, buddy. So I don't know. Does anybody want me to go through epistemology versus ontology? Does anybody not understand what that is and what we're talking about? Because I want to use this blackboard more to sort of show the differences between things, right? To show why things are or are not what they are and what they are in philosophy. So I'm happy to go through that. So, essentially ontology is the actuality of things. Like if there is if my wife is in the other room, or I believe my wife is in the other room, the ontology is whether she is actually there or not. Like in actual fact, regardless of what I think. Just say I thought I heard her left before, and I think, well, she's not in the other room. Whether she is there or not is independent of the reasons I have come to that conclusion. Now, understanding the reasons I have come to that conclusion, or the reasons why we go through these things, is called epistemology, how we come to that conclusion. Now, no one has direct access to any ontology. We can only come up with epistemology, how we find out if something is true or not true. That's all. We cannot just say, well, that is ontologically true. We cannot access that. You might say, hey, through my senses, I can see that the sky is blue, and I can, do tests on the sky, and I can confer with others. That is epistemology. The actuality of it is independent from it, and from any reason. And there might be cases where we are absolutely 100% certain it is the case. It doesn't mean that the ontology changes. Oh, thank you, Ember, for 16 months. 16 months, over a year. What are you doing, lady? So happy to see you. Mark is ontologically awesome. What now? I would ask to see your epistemology. I think you got an OnlyFans for that. I'm sorry. That's a joke. That's a joke. I'm sorry. But yeah, I think that the problem is with apologists is they confuse certainty, how certain they are, with the actuality of things. They think because I'm certain, it must be true. It doesn't really, that's not what we base it upon. Like, your certainty of something isn't really what we base it upon. Essentially, what we're trying to do is have a consistent methodology that is logically and rationally sound. So you know, it makes sense logically.
And he'll concede that, well, it's possible. But I think there's a stronger argument for the theistic case.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. So basically what he's saying is it's not impossible, which automatically makes it possible, right? So if you say, well, it's not impossible, like Dawkins would probably say, well, it's not impossible that there are fairies. It is possible, but we have absolutely no reason to believe that is the case. Just like with Big Bang, well, it's possible that a god did it. We've got no reason to think that is the case. Like, this is the thing. A lot of skeptics, especially skeptics, will not assign these absolutes to things. I think we saw in the Baptist Faith and Message, there was a lot of absolutes. Like, this is only the one true, whatever, you know, kind of absolutes of, you know, this person is the absolute authority. God is the absolute authority. A lot of scientists, and especially scientists and skeptics, will not sort of go for absolutes. So is there any such thing as absolute knowledge? Like knowledge that we absolutely know is true? And I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think even if there's a slight chance, there is nothing that is absolute certainty. And a precept would say, oh, are you absolutely certain of that? No. What we do is we attribute confidence to things. And sure, you can be confident of your God. I totally get it. But you're sort of saying, because I'm 100% confident and have absolute certainty in my God, and you don't have absolute certainty that there is no God, then the God exists, or the God is more likely to exist. And it does not work that way. The likelihood or the existence of something is independent of how certain you are about it. The likelihood depends on the evidence, not whether you're overwhelmingly, absolutely certain. Like, you might get somebody who's absolutely certain that the Hindu gods exist, and you would agree that that certainty doesn't make them exist, but you refuse to apply the same standards to your own God. That's the problem. That's the intellectual inconsistency that we're pointing out. You need other reasons to think your God is true and the Hindu gods are false, not just certainty. So when Richard Dawkins says, you know, it's not impossible, he's not saying that he thinks it's even plausible. He's just saying that, hey, I can't rule it out, especially because it's very, very vague. But he would say the same thing about magic or fairies or Bigfoot or any other thing that we do not believe in.
And that is that when scientists and philosophers reason from evidence, they typically use a method of reasoning that has a technical name. It's called inferring to the best explanation, where the
or inference, inferring to the best explanation. Sure. But the thing about science is it's very tentative. It doesn't say, well, the best explanation we have is, you know, something with no evidence behind it, so we're going to go with that one. That's not what they do. They want to infer to the best explanation that has evidence on its side, that has some kind of explanation. And they don't just, you know, it has to cross some sort of threshold to be even a candidate explanation. So when you're talking about the scientific principles, in order to be a hypothesis, and a historian and a physicist like Maya should know this, that it's got to be falsifiable. In order to even be a candidate explanation, it's got to have some way to disprove it. Because if you can never disprove it, and there's a couple of complicated reasons why this is, then you can't prove that it's correct. You can't use inference if you can't disprove something. You can't.
best explanation is one where invoking a cause which has the kind of powers that would be required to explain the phenomenon of interest. And you correctly pointed out in your conversation with him that when
Ian, thank you so much. Ian Chen, official for 14.99 Australian, my brother from another mother. Hi, Mark, not relevant to this stream, but I want to pop in and say I love your debates. And your latest was the resurrection. With the resurrection was, as usual, well-researched and articulately argued, never stop. Oh, thank you so much, Ian. I really appreciate that, mate. You know what? I did say this to a few people, but I felt like my performance was not very good right afterwards. But then I watched it again, or watched bits of it again, and went, no, I did do a good job on that one. So that was sort of a weird one, but thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was one that I think I was just tired and sort of got to the end of it, and I must admit I just was a bit down on myself. I should have been kinder to myself. But thank you, Ian. I really appreciate it, mate. And yeah, you never stop what you're doing as well, because I found, look, Ian's debates against Kent Hovind were hilarious, just hilarious. And it wasn't because Ian was unprepared or in any way bad. It was just the low-grade mocking that went all the way through that Kent had no idea about because he just missed it. It was delightful. In the best traditions of Australian sardonic, sarcastic humor. I loved it, Ian. You represent our country so well. And it's okay, Amber. It's no problem at all. You have good rest. I sleep well. And again, I'll be back with the lovely Amber on my Saturday night, my Sunday morning, to do the presidential debate. Watch out, world. Watch out, world. It's the debate dissection. With respect to, I'm sorry. Yep, okay. Thank you. With respect to the resurrection. Yep, cool. Well, I've learned something new. There you go.
You get back to that, what physicists often call the singularity, the point where matter, space, time, and energy begin to exist. The materialist is really up against a huge conundrum, because prior to the origin of matter, there is no matter to do the causing. That's
why is that a problem? You realize matter and energy are different things, right? That energy can exist and it's not matter. Like matter is the arrangement of atoms into certain formations, but we can break apart those atoms into quantum states as well. And it's not matter, but it is something, right? You are aware, maybe he isn't aware of this, which, if he's not aware that quantum energy, quantum foam and things are not matter, he's really got to hand back his degree, because holy crap. Wow.
We mean by the origin of matter, that's where it starts.
Right.
And so if you want to invoke a cause which is sufficient to explain the origin of matter, you can't invoke matter.
Nobody is. Nobody's invoking matter. Nobody is. That's the thing. Okay, so here's the thing, and here's a simplified sort of thing that somebody told me as a physicist. It's not an explanation, but it will sort of explain what they're talking about. If you break apart very, very basic particles, you'll get like a proton and an antiproton kind of thing, right? So you really are looking at things returning to a quantum state. Like, so if you get something and you if you break it apart and get a proton and an antiproton together, they make nothing. They make a quantum state. That's what they make. So the reverse way round, right? So if you've got something and you break it apart into two separate things which make together nothing, then nothing, or the quantum state, can make something. Now, that's a really poor explanation for what's going on, because it involves quantum physics, which I don't understand, and a hell of a lot of math. But I will guarantee that Stephen Meyer doesn't understand it either, because he's saying, hey, if it can produce matter and it's not matter, yeah, it's a quantum state. Like, you're simply going to the end state of matter and saying, well, that can't create matter. Yeah. She had a member chat. Didn't I read out the member chat? I read that out, didn't I? I read that out. I asked for her epistemology. I read that out. I was good.
Principle, the materialistic explanations are in principle insufficient. So,
well, when you say materialistic, you're trying to equate materialism with matter, and that is not how we define materialism. What is material is not the same as matter, i.e. solid things, because matter, energy, quantum states, they're all part of a materialistic model. You don't just say matter as in solid things made out of atoms, as that's the only thing out there in the materialistic model. So Stephen Meyer's doing a lot of sort of conflation here in the materialistic model to sort of go, well, it only includes matter. No, we have energy, we have other stuff as well.
you need to invoke something which is external to the material universe and is not bounded by time and space as well.
Okay, well, I mean, something external to the material universe that's not bounded by time and space. Well, quantum states would fall into that. Like, it's not part of the matter universe, and this is where he's kind of disambiguous. If he's using the definition material as matter, okay, nobody thinks that the world is the universe is just matter, but sure, let's take his definitions and use them. If he means material as in just matter, quantum state is external to that material world, meaning matter, and it's not bound by time or space. So we've got the solution right there.
And that starts to paint a picture of the kind of cause you would need that has the sort of attributes the traditional theists have traditionally.
No, it doesn't. No. What?
Associated with God.
Okay, so I want to jump in right here because Pierce Morgan kind of goes off into something, but Stephen Meyer makes some great points right here that in the origin of the universe, that there had to be something at the very beginning before the origin of the universe that was.
Okay, so first problem, David, that you've run into before the origin of the universe. So the Big Bang isn't the origin. We don't claim that's the origin. That's simply the rapid expansion of the universe, sort of, and we can go back to sort of one Planck epoch before what we think would be the beginning, but our physics sort of breaks down at that point. So when you're saying stuff like, and the Big Bang is when space-time, matter, energy is sort of comes together, is sort of formed. The problem is when you're saying before time, you've just run into a big problem. You're sort of saying before the Big Bang. You're saying before time. And time isn't time by itself. It isn't its own thing. It's space-time. It's part of, it's one, to use a bad word, dimension, one part of space, and the universe. It's space-time. They are inextricably linked. So you're sort of saying before time, and that makes no sense. You might as well say what color is transparent, or what color is invisible. It doesn't make any sense. It's a nonsensical statement. You're saying before time. If there's no time, how do you have a before? It doesn't make any sense. You're speaking nonsense. Left-handed Jedi, thank you so much, Left-handed Jedi. 8 months, awesome. Thank you so much, buddy. What sound does a quantum duck make? Quack, quack. Nice. You gotta love the dad jokes. Well, I love the dad jokes, but thanks LHJ. I really appreciate it. But yeah, this is a nonsensical statement. What's before the Big Bang? What's before time? Well, there's no time, so there can't be a before.
greater, that was outside of time and space, that caused the origin of the universe. And that is where the materialists, that's where the atheists, that's where they run into serious problems. They run into a thick wall right here, because there's no logical explanation for the beginnings, the origin of the universe. Before there was matter, what was there?
Quantum states, quantum plasma. Yeah, quantum field of quantum plasma. Can I get an acknowledgement that I've answered it? So just because you're basically saying, well, it defies all logic. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't, because you're using material as in matter. And what the physicists are actually saying is that, yeah, at one point matter didn't exist, but that doesn't mean that absolute, like the philosophical nothing existed. It means that there was no matter or energy, which is the physics version of nothing. But that doesn't mean there wasn't quantum states. And also, that doesn't mean there was anything, there was nothing outside the universe. Sean Carroll, the physicist Sean Carroll, he talks about parent and child universes, that it may be, so when we talk about cosmos, we're talking about our universe and any universe that may be outside of it. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I don't know. But you're sort of saying, hey, there's no logical explanation. And I'm saying, yes, there is. We are just tentative. We don't say, hey, we know this to be the case, when we don't know. But there's other explanations. There's a ton of other explanations. You just want to believe that the only logical one is that a magic man made it all happen by talking. And I don't see what's logical about that. I think that doesn't have much logic to begin with. But can I say it's impossible? No, because impossibility is one of the absolutes that I won't commit to. Do I have any reason to think that is true? No, no reason whatsoever to think that is true. No reason.
You can't have everything coming from nothing. So like, this is a really strong argument. And I find it interesting here that,
well, it number one, it assumes that nothing is literally no thing. Like, so if you have quantum plasma, it may be have no space, there's no space-time, there's no matter, there's nothing like that, there's no energy, there's nothing like that. But it is not no thing. It is nothing in the physics sense of no matter, no energy. Number two, the universe may be eternal. And when I say eternal, that's a really bad word for it. So if you're talking that space-time started at a certain point, right? So at some point in the Big Bang, space-time formed, right? So our current understanding of space and time formed as part of the universe. If you work backwards from there, if before time, but that's a really bad thing to say. So up to that formation, time may be relativistically speaking, slowing down. And if time becomes, let's say for a lack of a better word, it stops, right? There is no time. At the very, very start point, there is no space-time. So there's no time. That state may be atemporal. It may not, like, there is no time for anything to actually be occurring at all. So it's not like it's eternal, but it is in a state where nothing happens. That it's just in a state. Now, something external could act upon it, sure. But you have to show that's a God and not something else. Or it may have been in an atemporal state, in balance until something happened. What is that? I don't know. I don't know. But we're talking about sort of a universe coming from nothing, when that's only one of the category explanations, and you're misrepresenting the nothing anyway. It may be that the universe, even in an atemporal state, that would be there forever. Because when we talk about space-time, we're only talking about our local presentation of space-time, what we see in this universe. Physicists are never talking about any other representative space-time in any other universe or anything other than this particular universe. And we know time can stretch and slow in our universe. So if it slows to no time at all, then that, for intents and purposes of what you would say, is eternal. So it may, the building blocks of the universe, the quantum state of the universe may have always been here. We don't know, and that's the point. You're claiming you know. So instead of saying, hey, you don't know, you've got to show it, you instead have to show that it was in fact your God. And that's where you're failing. Eric Wanda, gifted 5 readerships. Thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate it. Darren Delaney, Kiwi Burb, Sterling Nash, Al Bundy, Oz, and KCA Randy, winner, chicken dinner. All of you lovely people. Thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate it, mate. That is awesome. And I'll give Lynn love to you. Yeah, I must admit, like, that's a good point. That's a good point. I should be on my Discord more. I did work on it. I added a whole bunch of stuff. You can post anything you want there. I do check it. It's just I should be on there more. I should do some live stuff on the Discord. I'll put that down and I'll try to work on it. I'm very bad. Look, I'll be honest with you. I'm terrible at social media. I know I'm a YouTube content creator and I'm terrible at social media. I know, okay, it's very, very weird and sort of counterintuitive. I get you, but some things are counterintuitive. So I'm terrible at social media. I'm terrible at I'm terrible at social anything, to be honest with you. Like let's be fair. But I'm good at debate and I'm good at logic. So forgive me, please. You know, I don't know how I got here, but I'm here, so I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best, Andrew. But yeah, if you put your art on there, I'd love to see it, mate. I really would. I love your last art that you put on there. Really cool stuff, like the Dungeons and Dragons-esque, you know, monsters were awesome. I really enjoyed them. So yeah, that would be sick, mate. Absolutely sick. Wow, I'm just descending into Australianisms, aren't I?
Piers Morgan brought in Stephen Meyer.
Oh, and the problem also is he's sort of saying, hey, your explanation doesn't make sense and you don't know how the universe started. This is God of the Gaps, and I will be explaining God of the Gaps in great detail. Hopefully David can understand what we mean by the argument or an appeal to the opponent's ignorance as an argument, which is basically what he's doing.
And they talked about this, and so now, you know, Piers Morgan, he's going to have a little bit of a commentary, and let's see if Richard Dawkins really pinpoints a good answer on this.
See, Richard Dawkins, this is the nub of, I think, my whole issue with your position on this, and you can respond obviously to what you just heard in a moment. But given your new book is about the genetic book of the dead, and it effectively takes us from here to in perpetuity on a genetic trail where each part of existence feeds the next and so on. And I totally subscribe to that. The genome of every body and every organization and so on creates, as you say, a comprehensive dossier on all the world as it moves forward. I get it. But when you go back to the very start, what is there before that? And that, I think I asked you last time, and Professor Meyer brought that up again as being the flaw in your position, which is what is there before it starts?
Okay, so this is a problem because he's sort of saying, hey, you wrote a book, the genetic book of the dead. So basically what Dawkins wrote about was how we can trace this, the story of humanity through genetics, like where we came from and what sort of organisms led to humans, even tracing back our ancestry and where humans expanded on the earth. Where did they go to? You know, what was the connection between, say, you know, Caucasians like myself and the African people, you know, we can trace this. So that's what he's talking about. And Piers Morgan's basically saying, well, you wrote this book about this. What came before biology? Richard Dawkins isn't an origin of life guy. He's not. Like, so I don't know why you'd have him on as an expert in this. Why not have an origins of life guy on? So this is really dishonest by Piers Morgan, but I think he's getting at what was before the Big Bang. And not even our best physicists know that, much less a biologist. Like, he's really just sort of taking somebody out of their field in order to say, well, they don't know. Why should he? He's a biologist. And even if he doesn't know, it doesn't make God a more likely explanation. Hi, Big Bad Mama. Good to see you. So this is a problem.
There's nothing.
This is a question for a physicist, not a biologist, but what I would answer to Professor Meyer is that we need to explain complexity in terms of simplicity. And of course, it's true that I cannot say what was there before the Big Bang. Physicists sometimes tell us that the word before doesn't even mean anything.
Yep, and that's true. If the Big Bang is the origin of space-time, and the most important word there being time, what does it mean to have before time? Before is a tense. It's a tenseful category. It's like saying, well, before this moment in time. If there's no time, you can't have a before. It's a nonsensical statement. It's like saying the color of transparent. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. Or the color of invisible. There is no color. There is no time. So there is no before.
Before the Big Bang. But whatever it was,
but it has to, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't have to, Piers. Oh, there has to be a before time. Do you hear yourself? If there's no time, how is there a before? It's like saying, absent of time, what time was it? It doesn't make any sense. It's a category error. And in logic, that's what we call when you're trying to apply something. Like if I say, what is the color of invisible? It's a category error. We don't apply colors to things that we can't see, because that is not a color. A color is the breaking apart of a light on a surface and coming back to us at a certain frequency. It doesn't apply to things that are invisible.
Doesn't it have to? Someone as logical as you are, I believe you are, you think about this all very logically. A logical mind surely has to appreciate that before the Big Bang, there has to have been something before then.
Yeah, no, a logical mind would say, okay, if we say the Big Bang is the origin of space-time and time, then before makes no sense. That is logic. You can't, if tense characterizations like before, after, during are dependent on time and there is no time, then you cannot apply tense to that statement. That's logic. What you're doing is you're basically being illogical.
Otherwise, what is nothing?
What is nothing? What is nothing? You're talking about it like it's something. And Tracy Harris from the Atheist Experience pointed this out, that when people are saying, well, what is nothing? What do you mean? Like, you can't have nothing. You're sort of talking like nothing as if it's something. But if you're treating it as something, then it's not nothing. And physicists don't, when they're using that term in their works, they don't think that nothing is actually nothing. They think it's just no matter, no energy. That's all. So, Piers Morgan's being incredibly disingenuous here, or perhaps he's just not aware of sort of how ridiculous he's sounding. But he's sort of making some fundamental errors in logic that sort of are really, there's got to be something before the Big Bang. I don't know. We don't know that. Is there? You're saying there is. Why don't you show that you're the one claiming to know? So you should show that it is in fact a God. Not like here's the thing. If you knock down all of Big Bang cosmogony, like the origin of the universe, if you just completely wipe every single theory, it doesn't give any more credence to your own. You've got to show the evidence for yours, not just attack other people's. And this is a problem that creationists make all the time. Because if I say it's magic fairies, if I just say, hey, it was magic fairies that created the universe, they're powerful, they can do it, magic can do anything by definition, they created the universe. If I shoot down the Big Bang and somehow prove it wrong, does that make fairies more plausible over God? No, they would say no, of course not. Don't be silly. That doesn't make it more plausible. Does it make God more plausible over fairies? Well, we know it doesn't. We know that simply negating an idea doesn't give any evidence to believe this other idea, but they would say it does. And I don't know why. That is illogical. It doesn't make sense.
A physicist will tell you that
Yeah, but what do you tell me?
And this is the disingenuous. This is where I think that Piers Morgan is actually being dishonest, because he's saying, like, the rational scientist will defer to people in that specialization. They will say, hey, you know, this isn't my field. This is what the physicists tell us. And Piers Morgan's like, what do you say? It's not his field. We're tentative. And you'll notice this with scientists in particular. They will be loath to make statements outside their field. They will defer to people in the field, you know, reputable ones, and not people from the creation ministry kind of thing that really just make up their own crap. They will speak in their own field only, because that's where their expertise is. They realize the limitations on not studying in another field, and they will defer to those experts, because that is what we do. That's what everybody does. If you need plumbing done and you don't understand plumbing, you won't say, well, I'm going to take this anyway because I decided that I'm good at plumbing. No, you get a plumber if you don't understand it. You get a mechanic if you don't understand cars. You get an IT expert if you don't understand computers. We don't say, you know, if you say, well, what's wrong with your computer? Well, the IT guy says, no, what do you think? What is this? If you wanted an opinion on cosmology, get on a cosmologist. What's wrong with this man? But I think it's a gotcha. I think it's a dishonest gotcha to say, okay, we'll have Richard Dawkins on. He's a prominent atheist. We're going to pester him about origin of the universe, and he won't be able to answer because he's not in that field. Ridiculous.
Okay, so I see that Dawkins right here is getting frustrated with Piers Morgan, and you know there's going to be a lot of critics of Piers Morgan saying that he's pressing a little too hard right here because Dawkins is trying to defer to a physicist. Now, to me, like, my question is this: no,
I don't think he's pressing too hard. I think that he's pressing on the wrong subject. I think that he's pressing on a subject that he's not an expert in, and is sort of saying, hey, you can't defer to the experts when that's not his field. I think he's being dishonest, not belligerent. I mean, maybe a little, but if this question was in the realm of evolutionary biology, I wouldn't have a problem with it. But it's not.
Sidestepping the question. I mean, is he going to give an answer instead of deferring to a physicist and saying, you know, this is something for someone else to answer? What Piers Morgan, now, honestly, what he's asking him here is that I want to hear what your opinion is on this. And so let's hear
what a ridiculous statement, David. What a ridiculous statement. If somebody asks you about, you know, Assyriology, for instance, has a question on the Empire of Assyria circa 600s, and you sort of say, well, I'm a pastor, but I'd have to defer to this historian, and I go, no, what do you think? That would be pretty silly, right? That would be pretty stupid. You know, it's just this whole idea of, oh, well, you're a prominent atheist. You've got to know absolutely everything about absolutely everything. No, I don't think so. Wow.
What Dawkins has to say about this.
I'm trying to tell you what a physicist would say, first of all. They would say that you cannot use the word before for the Big Bang. Time began at the Big Bang. Yep. There was no before the Big Bang. I know it's contrary to common sense. physicists don't necessarily deal with common sense.
Well, it makes
Yeah, so this is the idea. It's counterintuitive, granted. It's counterintuitive. We think of time as linear and not able to be changed at all. We live our lives under the influence of time in such a stable state that we think of it as this constant linear process that does not change. But that's not true, relativistically speaking. You can have, if you send a clock up away from the mass of Earth, time runs at a slightly different pace relative to the people on Earth. We've proven this with experiments. The whole idea that, hey, that's counterintuitive. Yes, it is. It'd be like people saying, hey, the world is a sphere, when someone says, well, that's counterintuitive. I see all this stuff around me and it looks flat. Yeah, it looks flat. It's counterintuitive. There's a lot of things in physics that are counterintuitive, right? A lot of things in physics are not like how you would expect them to behave. They're just not. And you're sort of going, oh, but that's not what I expect to happen. So what? So what? Again, we've got this consequence thing, this argument for, well, that makes it really hard to understand. Yeah. And it's true. It's counterintuitive and true. A lot of things are counterintuitive and also true. This whole idea that we can just use common sense,
what we're trying to deal with here is common sense. I mean, that's what we're looking for, the logical answer right here now. So
logic and common sense are not the same thing. Common sense is the sort of cultural and the sort of sociological expectation of things, that, hey, things should make sense. Things should run in a linear progression. Things should have a sense to them intuitively. But that's not how things work. That isn't how anything works. Things just are. They will run how they run, whether it feels like it should be common sense to us or not. So when we're dealing with logic, common sense has no place in logic either. We don't just say, hey, it's common sense for, these things to happen. No, it's not common sense. It's logic. Logic, it's its own language and formula and works by certain processes. I found De Morgan's theorem to be counterintuitive, which is the process that two ors and an and is equal to two ands and an or. It's counterintuitive. It seems like it shouldn't make sense, but you can do a truth table, which is how you plot these things out, and it works out to be exactly the same. I might do the truth table, actually, if you'd like to see it. I don't know how much of this stuff you want to see, because we can do that if you want. We can go through a truth table and say that is actually absolutely true. Actually absolutely true.
This will be something, if we're going to look at logic and say that, science is going to provide us with a logical answer to things. What about the origination of the universe? That's what we're looking for right here. So, to defer to physicists and say we can't understand this, I mean, it seems to me like this is just kind of a punt on the side of Richard Dawkins.
No, a punt to an expert. I don't understand what that means. Like, you're basically saying, hey, he isn't a cosmologist, he's punting to a cosmologist. Yeah. That is the best thing to do. You're talking about incredibly complex subjects. If you asked him, hey, what's the best treatment for a flu? And he says, well, the doctors say, and you go, no, what do you think? Stop punting to a doctor. What are you talking about? Of course you bring up the current scientific consensus, because that's what responsible scientists do.
No sense, does it? And that's what I mean. I think you're a logical man. That cannot make sense to you. The idea that you're not even allowed to use.
Well, it makes sense to me. It makes logical sense to me. If there is a beginning of time or a point at which time forms, there cannot be a before, because before relies on time, which only started existing. That's perfectly logical to everybody. I think this has got more to do with he doesn't want it to be true.
Use the word before the Big Bang, when every part of both of our brains.
Yeah, that's a good example, Jedi. That's a good example. If you go to just say you go to ear, nose, and throat surgeon, and you're being checked out, and he says, "Oh, I found this cancerous tumor. We're going to send you to an oncologist." You don't turn around and go, "Well, no. Well, what do you think?" Stop punting it to somebody else. They're specialists for a reason. That's a good example, mate.
Tells us that that's obviously nonsensical. Doesn't that make you think again?
We are not physicists. I, like you, am completely baffled by what physicists say to me, which is that you cannot use the word before for before the Big Bang.
I don't know. It doesn't baffle me. It doesn't baffle me. It really doesn't. You know, I don't know why that's baffling. Like, if there is no time before because it is tensed, it's it's not applicable to a part of the universe where there is no time. I don't know what's baffling about that. I don't know what's confusing about that. And yeah, it feels like, hey, there should be time, but that's just a feeling. You know, it's just I've lived with time. I don't understand how there can't be time. I don't understand why that should make an impact on anything. It's still logical. I don't get it.
Time itself began at the Big Bang. Now, that is totally counterintuitive. It's counterintuitive to me. It's counterintuitive to you. It's counterintuitive to Stephen Meyer. But we are not physicists. And you need to talk to a physicist. Talk to a physicist about that. And they will tell you that you cannot use the word before for the Big Bang.
Yeah, but
Okay, so let's talk to a theologian then. So what do theologians say about that?
Why would we talk to a theologian about, like, the Big Bang? Why would we talk to a theologian about the Big Bang? Why? I don't understand. Let's talk to a theologian about the Big Bang. Why?
Yes, a theologian would say that you can use before as far as time is concerned. And what would that be?
A theologian says you can use before the Big Bang. So a theologian would say time started at the Big Bang, but you can use before. That makes no sense to me. That is completely irrational and illogical. That's like saying, well, a theologian says you can apply color to invisible things. I don't care that theologian has a faith belief. I don't care. I really don't care. Like, they're not in any way an expert on the Big Bang.
Be eternity. That would be eternity past. See, we believe that God is an eternal being. That means he existed in eternity past. So I mean, like, so to say that because we can't use
okay, now you need to show that time progressed before the Big Bang. Like, if you're saying that the origin of time was not the Big Bang, if you're saying that there was a progression of eternity, then show it. Demonstrate this. Don't just claim it. This is dogmatic assertion. That's all it is.
the word before. So I would say that in theology we can use the word before, and that's how we understand that God is a the creator of the universe.
You think that's as preposterous as I do?
I do, because I'm not a physicist.
Yeah, I don't. I get that. It seems counterintuitive, but I get it. It's logical. If Big Bang was the origin of time, then you can't use before when there is no time. I don't know what's hard about this. Maybe it's just me and my brain wraps around it easier, but that seems perfectly logical to me. Wow.
You've just written a book as a biologist called Genetic Book of the Dead, in which you talk about the body and the genome, comprehensive dossiers, and so on. So you're prepared to expound a philosophy based on that as a biologist, which I completely respect.
It's not really a philosophy. I mean, yeah, it probably delves into some philosophical concept, but he's more a scientist than a philosopher. The fact that Richard Dawkins is an atheist is purely incidental. He really is first and foremost an evolutionary biologist. He's not sort of trying to make a philosophy out of it, or at least not. That's not his primary objective. He's just trying to explain how evolutionary biology works. I don't think that this is a philosophical book. I think he's more just talking about how we can tell a lot about humanity and the origins of humanity from the genetic markers in other animals and in ourselves, basically. Oh, hey, Heelhugger. It's so good to see you, mate.
Makes perfect sense. The book makes perfect sense the way that you have written it. But why would you then think that a physicist cannot be contradicted just simply because they're a physicist? I can contradict what you say as a biologist.
Yeah, they can be contradicted, but you need to have more than just an assertion, Piers. You can, like, if you go up to a physicist and go, well, that doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't, common sense. They're going to laugh at you. You've got to actually provide some sort of evidence that they're wrong, not just state that they're wrong. Why should we care what you think? You're talking about individuals that spend their lives studying this, spend their entire lives studying this. And you're basically going, well, you're wrong because I feel like you're wrong. Wow.
No, you really aren't getting it. I'm so sorry. Modern physics is exceedingly mysterious. It really is. I mean, have you tried to read some of the difficult modern physics books? It really is very difficult to understand. And intuition doesn't do it. You cannot use human intuition. Human intuition was built up by evolution over many millions of years to survive on the African plain, hunting and gathering, looking for water holes.
So this is Dawkins' sphere of expertise, is evolution. He can explain intuition. Intuition is type 1 thinking. It's very, very quick, very decisive. It gives you sort of things that you can sort of rely on without really thinking about it. It's snap decision thinking. It's not particularly accurate. Sorry, it's not. Like, there's a lot of times when you have an intuitive thought that someone is dangerous or someone is kind, and you're wrong, right? People that rely on their intuition, they really go through hit or missing. Rationality type 2 thinking is so much slower. It's incredibly slower. It's painstakingly slow. So it's not useful for quick decisions, but it's a hell of a lot more accurate than intuition.
Looking for mates and so on. Our brains were not built to understand the profundities of the origin of the universe, the end of the universe, the kind of things that
Trust Dawkins to use a word like profundities. Wow.
Physicists deal with. I think it's actually amazing that at least some human brains are capable of dealing with this kind of stuff. My brain isn't, and nor is yours.
No, but that's...
So I would say right here that he's making an argument that's the same argument that we make from a Christian worldview and a biblical worldview, is that we can't comprehend who God is. We can't comprehend how to relate to God apart from the supernatural work of the Holy Spirit inside of us. We talked, this comes from John chapter 3, whenever Jesus told Nicodemus that you must be born from above before you can see the kingdom of God. So we realize that this is that outside of having the supernatural work, the Holy Spirit inside of us, that faith, Christianity, Jesus, this whole biblical worldview, that it is nonsensical. I mean, it's hard that we can't in and of ourselves comprehend this. So it's interesting to hear Richard Dawkins use that argument that we can't comprehend what the physicists are teaching us here about the universe. And I would say that I could flip that over and say the same thing about Christianity.
No, that's not the same argument, David, because you're saying no one can ever possibly comprehend the God, where Richard Dawkins is saying we're not trained and studied this for years and years and years to be at the level that physicists are. Like, okay, so let's go back to our mechanic kind of thing, right? Just say, I mean, I don't know David's, how good he is with engines and things, but it's like saying, well, it's equivalent of saying, well, I don't understand how a jet engine works on an F-14, right? So, I would defer to the aircraft mechanic to explain how a jet engine on an F-14 works. And you're sort of saying, well, it's the same as us saying that we can't understand God. No, it's not, because we're not saying that it's completely inexplicable to everybody. We're saying that there are people that study and study and study and study and learn, and in a painstaking amount of time, figure these things out. and they give the best explanations because that is what they do. That is their area of specialization. Just as the aircraft mechanic of the F-14, you know, we're not saying no one can understand an F-14 engine. We're saying that the guy that has studied it and has worked with them is the guy to turn to when you want an explanation of it. He's not saying the same thing as you. Where what you're saying is you have an explanation, that is God, and no one can ever possibly understand it. It's beyond understanding. It's unfalsifiable. It's unachievable to get any understanding of this deity. That's what you're saying. Those are two totally different things. Totally different.
Is that apart from the supernatural work of the Holy Spirit inside of us, we can't comprehend spiritual matter. So, I mean, I think it's fair that he could say that that is a frustrating thing that physicists are up against and trying to explain these concepts that are just so hard for us to grasp. And I would say that for,
you know what, the whole idea that the tense, like before, during, after, doesn't apply where there is no time, that's not hard to understand. I'm really sorry. I'm really, really sorry. That's not hard to understand. I'm sorry, it's not. It's not. It's the same as if there's no light bouncing on something, something's transparent or invisible, there's no color. It's so easy to understand. I'm sorry, I have to call this out. That's not hard to understand. No time equals no before, no during, no after, nothing to do with tense, with time designations absent of time.
theologian and for a Christian, that, you know, there's some concepts right there that beyond the work of the Holy Spirit inside of us that we just in our human comprehension can't fully comprehend. And the greatest mystery of all is God, the eternal God. Speaking of God being in eternity past, that is the greatest mystery of all, that he's outside of time and space.
Yeah, you need to show that, not just assert it. So none of this is sort of, you know, you're sort of saying, well, I can give an answer an atheist can't, so therefore I'm right. Right? That's essentially what he's saying. That is God of the gaps. And I'll quickly go through God of the gaps. Right? I'll just quickly go through it and sort of give you an idea of why God of the gaps is an illogical and irrational argument, because I did promise I would do this. So I'm going to go through it. Okay, so just say you have two philosophers. Here we have Socrates, and here we have Plato. We have a tree, and we have a lightning bolt hits the tree. Okay, Socrates, always the humble philosopher, Socrates says, I don't know. Why did that happen? I don't know. No idea. Plato says it was Zeus. So which answer is going to be correct? Which is going to be correct? This by itself, just the idea that if Plato says you don't know, therefore my answer better. Whoops. You don't know, therefore my answer better. That does not follow. That does not follow. Whether or not the lightning bolt was Zeus or not has nothing to do with whether Socrates has an answer or does not have an answer. It's got nothing to do with it. The fact that he doesn't know does not make this more likely. Okay, just say they see in the sky a dude with a beard and he's throwing this lightning bolt. He's got his lightning bolt and he's throwing it, and they look in the sky and they see it, right? Then that's evidence that it is in fact Zeus. That's evidence that Plato is right. But the whole idea that I don't know what the answer is alone adds any kind of evidence to this explanation is a fallacy. And that fallacy is the appeal to ignorance. AKA the argument from ignorance. And when applied to a God claim, AKA God of the gaps. Him using the gap in knowledge of Socrates is not an argument that is logical. It's not. A gap in his knowledge does not make that any more likely. And that's God of the gaps. You're basically saying you can't give an answer for the origin of the universe, therefore my answer is better. That argument does not follow. It does not. So that's God of the gaps. And we can apply this to anything. If you say you have a detective, right? You have a detective, and that detective says, it's a whodunit. So let's put this in simple terms. Whodunit. The detective says, who did this? I think it's just a lot of fools. And the other detective says, I don't know. I don't have a suspect yet. Does the fact that one detective suspects somebody and the other one doesn't give any more credibility to that it was Jester? Independent of anything else. Like we're talking about no evidence, just somebody has a gut feeling. No, it doesn't. If you're basing it, if you find, obviously, if you find Jester's, I'll do the body outline here. If you find evidence, like you find a gun and it's got Jester's fingerprints on it, and Jester left their water bottle, and it's his. That's another story. That's another story, right? That's totally different. But what we're saying is that not having an answer does not make it any more likely that the other answer is correct. What you need is actual support for your answer. You need to show that it is actually what you suspect. And that's what we're saying. That's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing.
That's my point, though.
I wish it were.
Well, yeah, I wish both our brains could. But the truth is, it's because the human brain can't comprehend this, including, I don't think, any physicist. Because the moment they say you can't have before the Big Bang, they lose me completely just on a common sense.
That doesn't mean they don't understand it, Piers. Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean they some person who's a jet engine mechanic may talk about manifolds and, pressures and timing. And just because I don't understand it doesn't mean they don't. What a terrible argument, dude.
It's that reason that I think there has to be a power that is greater than the human brain. And that gives me succor to my belief in God, and why I think people turn to God.
Well, they're turning away at the moment. And the reason why I think they're turning away, well, aside from the horrible scandals in all of the churches that have been happening recently, and the horrible things that they believe, please refer to the Baptism 2000 that Elevated Reflections apparently adheres to, which is bigoted and awful in its strategy of trying to make the world into a theocracy. There's also the fact that, and a question that I often ask is, what has a religion done to tell us about the world and the universe around us in the last 2,000 years? And I don't mean just making claims and saying, oh, it was God that did this and God that did that. Because as we know from pre-Enlightenment days and the Dark Ages, that kind of thinking holds us back. If you're familiar with the Dark Ages and the Enlightenment, it is the rejection of God as a candidate explanation. Even if you believe in God, you can't explain anything with him, that led to scientific progress. And religions have not told us anything about the world around us. It hasn't told us anything. It simply says, hey, there was a guy died ages ago. You're saying the same thing you were always saying 2,000 years ago. Religion has done nothing to further our understanding of the universe. Nothing. It doesn't make any great strides. It doesn't uncover any truths. All it does is just make the same tired old claims it was making thousands upon thousands of years ago and dogmatically repeating it. That's all it's doing. So that's why people are sort of rejecting religion. And when you want to sort of, it's only once you understand the world that we can actually implement things to address our problems and our concerns. And that's why people turn to science. Science doesn't tell you what you ought to do about the world, or, say, hey, we've got to make science superior overall. It doesn't have that sort of dogmatic and theocratic bent. It doesn't do that. But what it will do is tell you the actual state of how things are and why they happen in the real world. That's all. It doesn't tell you what to do with them. We need something else for that. That's all it does. But the fact that people who claim to have a direct line to an omnipotent and omniscient being that knows and has answers for everything but can't solve anything is kind of unbelievable. Oh, how, not why. You're absolutely right, Beheaded. You're absolutely right. How it happened. Well, by why, I mean, the cause kind of thing. I get you, though. Yeah, no, you're correct. No, good catch. How it happened. Yes. Yes. Sky Daddy did it, period. Now give me money. Thanks, Eric. Member for 6 months. Nice work. It shocks me, some of the people that are raking it in these days. I mean, Piers Morgan is pretty low-level arguments, to be honest with you. He's not very good at all. I don't know how it's weird, and not to put too fine a point on it, these absolute, I mean, I don't want to be insulting, but they really are morons. Like, let's face it. They're people that are not inspired thinkers, let's put it that way, sort of just failing upwards. I'm not looking at any particular ex-president, but yeah, just failing upwards. It's incredible. And all because they have this conviction that they're right and everybody else is wrong.
Of different types, obviously. They turn to that because it is incomprehensible otherwise what has happened here.
There has to be something.
Well, it's not incomprehensible because physicists comprehend it. Like, this is the thing. Just because we say we don't know doesn't mean these theories and hypotheses are incomprehensible. At one point, we didn't comprehend space. Like, we didn't comprehend that we were on a, globe planet. Actually, I keep mentioning the globe. I don't even know if David's a globe believer, which is currently what is splitting the evangelical churches out there. Because if you're willing to believe that a God spoke everything to existence, you're probably willing to believe that the earth is flat against all scientific reasoning. And I don't know where this guy lies on that point. I think it's a question I've got to ask more often, because it's surprising the amount of people that, you're talking about religion thinking that they're just, they have a different belief system, and they'll just drop that they're a flat earther as well. It's incredible.
There has to be something more difficult to understand than the human brain can understand. I accept that. But it doesn't have to be God. It doesn't have to be the kind of God.
Well, the same argument would be a flat earther saying, hey, gravity doesn't make any sense to me. How can it be true? Mass attracts mass. What's that all about? That doesn't make any sense to me at all, so it can't be true. No, that's irrelevant. It's irrelevant whether it makes sense to you, whether it's true or not. And it does make sense to our best and brightest, the physicists studying this. It does make sense to them. A lot of it is counterintuitive. So by counterintuitive, we mean it immediately doesn't make sense because it seems like it should not be true. but a lot of things are counterintuitive. That's why physicists do presentations. Has anyone ever seen the wheel presentation where the woman spins the wheel and then holds it on a string and it just stands upright? It's counterintuitive. It feels like that should just hang down and spin, but it doesn't. It's centripetal motion. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But that's how physics works.
Who, oh, I don't know, forgives sins and listens to prayers and things like that. There is something very mysterious, and I don't understand it, and you don't understand it, and maybe we never will. I think it's not clear whether physicists understand it. Some do, some don't, but it's obviously going to be very mysterious. But God is not that interesting mystery. God is just a personification of human desires, a father figure, something like that, somebody who looks after you. You said at the beginning it was comforting for you. God is somebody who listens to prayers, who forgives sins, who takes action for the benefit of humanity or not, as the case may be. We're not talking about that now. We're talking about deeply, deeply mysterious, profound things, which physics...
There's a problem, Dawkins. They think it's deeply profound and mysterious. They do think that God is deeply profound. That's the problem. That's what they think. But the problem is that you can't just say, well, it's mysterious, so I can't explain it. And it's true. Okay, you can believe that, but if you want to convince me it's true, you've got to have better than that. I can't just say, hey, it was a magic stone called the Blarney Stone, which is incredibly mysterious. We'll never understand it. You'll never understand it. But trust me, bro, that isn't an argument. It's what's called dogmatic assertion. You're just stating it's true and keeping stating it's true instead of showing how you got to the conclusion that it's true. And I mean, I love all these theists like claiming the Big Bang as sort of their own, when, you know, the early part of theistic understanding was denying that it existed at all. It's not like God told us about the Big Bang that he did. You've just assimilated it into your religion and said, oh, well, you found this thing. Well, God did that. What makes you think that? He's mysterious. That's not an explanation. That's dogmatic assertion.
Is working on, and it's very difficult to understand. And the fact that you don't understand it and I don't understand it is not good grounds for suddenly invoking a supernatural sky daddy.
Okay, so
we pulled out the sky daddy. Yeah, Dawkins does use that word a lot, and we've discussed the sky daddy thing. It can be very triggering for the Christians. So in a debate, I won't use it unless they're strawmanning my position. I think with David strawmanning what physicists mean by nothing, I kind of feel like he deserves a strawman sky daddy back, quite frankly. So I'm not that put out about it. But you know, somebody pointed out, I can't remember who it was, some absolute hero pointed out, hey, you even say my Father who art in heaven. That is a sky father. If it's the heaven sky, I don't know.
So if you're going to take God out of the equation, I mean, like, so what Dawkins is saying here is he's saying
What
that...
do you mean take God out of the equation? God's not in the equation. We're talking about the scientific study of these things. God's not in the equation. You've got to demonstrate that God exists before you can put it in the equation, which you refuse or can't do. So we're not going to put it in the equation. It's like saying, well, when you rule fairies out of the equation, no, it's not how anything works. We don't just assume they're part of the equation until such time as, you know, we can prove it wrong. No, nothing works like that.
You know, we don't have to insert God in here. God is not the explanation that we need. Okay, so if you take God out of the explanation, then here's my question. What are you going to insert?
You don't have to insert anything. You don't have to insert anything, but we can insert natural processes. We can just say, hey, the best explanation is probably, and I'm not saying this with certainty, but probably natural processes. Because every single time we have thought there is a supernatural thing happening, like the lightning in my Zeus example, it's turned out to be natural processes. So that's fine. We can just say natural processes. Let's find out what they are. If it leads to a God, great. If it doesn't, great. But you want to say ahead of time, before we understand it, it's a God. And that's weird and strange and sort of, just dogmatic, insisting that it is God. It's not an actual understanding of anything.
You have not put anything else in here to explain the origins of the
Natural
universe.
processes. There you go. You've got something.
You can't back us up back before the Big Bang and give us an explanation for what was there, what happened, what caused the Big Bang.
No.
So, I mean, like, he's making a fair argument? I'd say yes, he is. But my pushback on this argument is this: if you're going to take God out, then what are you offering? What's the insertion?
Natural processes. That's fine. Like we can think, but we'd rather say we don't know. Let's find out. This is why sort of this kind of dogmatic belief and this fundamentalist belief is the death of science. Why investigate if it's God? Why bother? That's Dark Ages thinking. You just have to leave it in God's hands. That's Dark Ages thinking. It's why our science didn't progress during that time. Everything was up to God. Everything was always just rooted in God. You just had to have faith in God. Nothing could be explained. We're actually coming up with models to explain it. Are you? No. All you've got is just God done it. That's it.
Here. So we need something else to be put in this space. If we're going to say there is no God and we don't need God. And what's interesting too is that, why all of a sudden does he start?
Yeah. So if let's go back to my detectives again. Okay. So one guy says, oh, it's Jester. And the other one says, well, I don't know. I don't know who it was. We've got to investigate further. We don't have enough evidence to suspect anybody yet. If you eliminate Jester as the other one's suspect, he's saying, well, if you eliminate Jester, you've got to put somebody there. You've got to come up with another suspect. No, he doesn't. If you rule out somebody, you don't have to replace it with somebody else. You can say, hey, we don't have a suspect. Let's go investigate. Now, which is the best way for those detectives to find the person that actually did it? Is it just deciding on somebody through their intuition and just assuming it's Jester? And if it's not Jester, then just grab somebody else? Or is it actually taking the time to say, we don't know, let's do some actual investigation of the evidence and do forensics and do science to find out? I would offer that the second way is better. And yeah, you might have a suspect in mind. You might suspect God did it. That's fine. But that's no reason why I should believe it. If you cannot provide any reason why that's your suspect, there's no reason to believe it. It's like the other detective saying, well, why do you suspect Jester? And you just saying, well, because I do. That convinces nobody.
Talking about sin. Why does he have a scowl on his face right now? Why is this so repulsive to him? It's interesting to me that every time
a lot of people have a scowl on their face when they're forced to talk about high level physics and cosmogony. Like, it's not an easy subject. I don't know if you've delved into, physics about the beginnings of the Big Bang, but it's not his field. And Piers is being an ass because he's expecting him to answer every question of something that's out of his field. And scientists are very reluctant to do so. They defer to the experts because they are humble. They're tentative with their declarations of truth. Unlike you, who just read a book, was raised a Christian, perhaps. You like the book, you write and then you just decide that God's the answer. How do you know that? How do you show me that you know that? What's your chain of logic to get there? Not just, I believe it. Why do you believe it? What's your chain of logic that leads you to it? And not, oh, well, scientists don't know how the Big Bang occurred. You've got to have your own explanation of why you have come to this conclusion, which you will not do. You'll just say, hey, this doesn't make sense to me. Okay, but that's no reason to believe what you believe.
Talks about God, that he talks about sin. He makes a big deal about sin. That's just an interesting thing to me. I don't understand that concept when we're trying to talk about logical issues here. Why all of a sudden do we start talking about a sky daddy and getting so frustrated so quickly on this?
Well, I mean, it's Dawkins. He's an old bloke. He gets testy sometimes. I mean, it's Dawkins. He's known to get like really. Are you surprised? He gets really shitty with theists that want to push their religion, and Piers is pushing the God concept and sort of demanding that he defend all of Big Bang physics. It's like, what are you doing?
Genomes, if our genetic background has all the information which has led to us being what we are today, and that will obviously extrapolate as we go forward, then it does beg the question, doesn't it? Where does the original information come from?
Yes, it does. And as far as a biologist is concerned, we're talking about the original information coming at the origin of life. And that's something which biologists and chemists and physicists can deal with. But you've gone right back to the origin of the universe, to the Big Bang, which is another matter entirely, and which is not really relevant to the biological question of what happens once biology gets started, which is the origin of genetics, actually. It's the origin of the information which is passed from generation to generation, from living creature to living creature. That started maybe 3.8, maybe 4 billion years ago. The universe started more like 13.8 billion years ago, which is a much longer time ago, and which is a totally different question, nothing to do with biology.
It doesn't.
Yeah, that's, I mean, it's right. It's a great point he's making right there. These are two total different things right here, two total different questions right here. However, what I would say, my pushback on this is that the bigger question is the origins of the universe. That's the biggest question right here. That is the main question that needs to be solved. That is a big one right here. So yeah, there are two different questions here, but they are linked, because you can't, without the origin of the universe, you can't have anything else beyond that. So this is a big question we're talking about here.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean we can't answer anything after that point if we don't know the origin of the universe. It doesn't mean because you don't know what factory your car was manufactured in, if you get into an accident, then you can't tell what happened in the accident. This is a really weird statement from theists sometimes. I'm not sure if David's making this, he might not be, but he seems to be leaning towards it, that if you can't answer the origin, you can't answer anything. And it's like, no, we can certainly, I don't need to know where my pen was made to know that it ran out of ink. There's no problem with that. There's no problem with any of that. We don't need to know origins of things in order to answer other questions. That's not a thing. So I'm not sure what they're getting at with this, going back to the origins, and why Dawkins should know about the origins of the, actually why Dawkins should know about the origin of biology is beyond me as well, because he's not an origin of life guy. He probably knows a lot more about it than the origins of the universe, though. So at least Piers is somewhere in the ballpark of Dawkins' field here.
Code have to have a coder.
Doesn't the code have to have a coder? No.
No, of course it doesn't. Code arises spontaneously at the origin of life. Something very, very simple, probably.
And DNA is not a cipher. It's not an encrypted code. It's not really a code at all. It is information, but calling it a code, it's really weird, because in order to say that it's a code, you'd have to say things like the pulsing of a pulsar is a code. It transmits information, or the patterns on a flower is code. It signals to bumblebees. The mind isn't involved in those. It's just evolution. It selects information. That's all.
Of the origin of life, which was not genetic, not DNA at least. It would have been some kind of genetic, some kind of coding, which would be a self-replicating molecule. Once you get a self-replicating molecule, then you have the possibility of mutation, which is the mistake in coding.
But where does that come from?
You were about to say something?
Yeah, where does it come from?
It comes from a random accident in chemistry at some time around 3.8 to 4 billion years ago.
A random accident in chemistry. That's an interesting way to put that right there. Now, of course, he's not talking about the creation of the universe. I mean, he's talking about the second aspect right here, the origin of life. And so that's interesting way of putting it.
Yeah, I don't know why he'd put it any different. Like, it's just chemicals come together. There's a few hypotheses out there. There's amyloid world. There's RNA world. There's the hydrovent one, but I think that's been sort of largely discarded because of the presence of water. But there's other hypotheses. Do we know which one for sure? No. but they're working at it, and they're taking some very big steps in origin of life.
And okay, but I don't want to labor this point, but I'm genuinely fascinated. Genuinely.
Okay.
But, so it happened 4 billion years ago. There was this chemical thing, whatever. But what was there before the chemical thing?
Chemicals. You know, chemicals are just combinations of elements, right, Pierce? Does he know that? Like the elements, like you have, let's take water. You have hydrogen, 2 hydrogen atoms and an oxygen atom, right? Like it's like saying, well, what was the water before it was water? Hydrogen and oxygen, same elements. They combine. They make compounds. I don't. What did you take a science class?
Oh, well, there was chemistry. There was plenty going on before then, because we've got about 11 billion years, 10 million years to play with there, so there was plenty going on. What happened 4 billion years ago was a spontaneous, accidental arising of a molecule which made copies of itself. That was a very improbable event, admittedly, a very improbable event. But
I'm glad to hear him say that too. That is very improbable. That is an improbable event.
It's more probable than a magic man conjuring us out of dirt. Sorry.
And that's just, I mean, what I was saying this is that takes some, as I start thinking about this, you don't have the origin of the universe. You don't have anything that originated the universe. We don't know what happened before that. And then, this improbable event right here with the origin of life. I mean, like, man, I would say this, that takes a lot of faith to believe that. The truth is, it takes more faith to believe that everything came from nothing than to believe that everything came from a creator God. When we see the universe, a fine-tuning of the universe, when we see the masterpiece of God, it's hard to believe that this was just a random chance, an accident in chemistry that brought all of this into being, just into a perfect circumstances for us to survive and live. And once again, we're leaving out the whole fact that we are conscious agents, and that we have a moral compass inside all of us of right and wrong, and on and on. I mean, just to narrow down to this one thing right here, the origins of the universe. It's hard to believe this is just an accident. That takes an enormous amount of faith.
Well, he didn't say the origin of the universe. He said the origin of life. The origin of life was an accident, is what he said. He didn't say origin of universe, so you're completely misrepresenting him there. He didn't say that was an accident. He said origin of life was an accident, an accident with chemicals, basically. So here's the thing: you're kind of, be honest. He never said that it was the universe was an accident. Oh, that's it. So yeah, that was David Yarbrough. He is a Baptist pastor, and I guess wants to be an apologist, but with arguments like this, I can't see him getting very far at all. And probably a good thing, because the Baptist stuff that I read about his church and their beliefs is pretty horrendous. Again, I think that we should we should address his arguments. But really what I got into was sort of saying, somebody said it was God of the gaps, and sort of he said, no, it's not. Like that's just something atheists say. No, it's not just something atheists say. It's a actual fallacy in logic, where your logic does not follow from the premises that you've laid down. That because somebody doesn't know who the culprit was, it doesn't make somebody else's guess right. That's essentially what it is. It's an appeal to somebody else's ignorance. It's an appeal to saying the scientists don't know, therefore my explanation is right. No, that does not follow. Any more than I could say, hey, it's the Blarney Stone, because you don't know what caused the universe, so therefore the Blarney Stone. That does not follow. Or we don't know what it is, so it has to be natural processes. That's exactly the same. But the whole idea that an atheist can't answer this question is completely incorrect. Anybody can give an answer to this question. It's not important. I'll give you an answer. Natural processes. There you go. Oh, how do I know that? Well, that's a different question, isn't it? That's something that we're going to have to show that it was natural causes. And if you're saying, well, God's mysterious, I don't have to explain how he works. Well, natural causes are mysterious, and we don't have to explain how they work. Like, this is silly. It's a silly thing to sort of appeal to the lowest common denominator that thinks that if somebody doesn't have an explanation, their confident pastor is much more knowledgeable, and that is not the case. I refer again to Socrates, who basically says, wisest is he who knows he knows nothing. He's basically saying that the wiser person is the one that admits that they don't know, rather than just, like my example with Plato, inserting Zeus into that space. The wiser person is the one that acknowledges the lack of their knowledge. And we always do. That's what science is about. We try to acknowledge as much as possible where we don't know something, because not knowing something and acknowledging that's the key to finding out. David's never going to search for the origin of the universe. He thinks he's got it already. He's never going to ponder over whether, the universe could be atemporal or timeless at some point and what that entails. He's never going to do that. It's all just, well, God did it. Thanks, beheaded. Ouch. No, that's fair. But thank you so much, everybody. That's the end of the video. But I did want to, strike back against that one, because they did argue with me, and I think that the argument was bad. It was weak. It was so weak. Piers Morgan is a terrible interviewer who I don't think he's honest. I really don't think he's honest. That's not honest at all to have in Dawkins and then pester him on origin of life and cosmogony, the origins of the universe. That's not being honest at all. If he was honest, he'd have somebody somebody who could actually answer those questions, like Lawrence Krauss or what's his name? Sean Carroll or somebody, right? He'd have somebody with actual experience in that area. But, I think Pierce just wanted I don't know how it happened. Oh, then why doesn't God make sense to you? That is one of the worst arguments I've ever heard. One of the worst. Neil deGrasse Tyson, yeah, absolutely beheaded. Yeah, true that. Have on Neil deGrasse Tyson. He'll tell you what physicists think. He's a good science communicator. I'm not sure it's his specialized field, but he understands enough to be able to communicate it. I get it. Yeah, Cosmic Skeptic absolutely smacked him down too. But I think Cosmic Skeptic was on regarding the monarchy of all things, because he's in England, and I think that Cosmic Skeptic is a anti-monarchist. So I think it was on monarchy. So yeah. But thank you so much for joining me, everybody. This has been Fundamentalist Fails, and today we have been giving the big F to David Yarbrough. Terrible arguments, absolutely terrible. But hopefully we'll be back with somebody a bit more coherent and a bit less just God done it, I guess. Don't forget to tune in Saturday night Eastern time, Sunday morning Australian time for Ember and I reviewing the presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, which should be hilarious and frustrating and, all of the good things. It's only a shame I'm not going to give my original reaction. I do like giving my original reaction to debates. I really do like it, but my wife and I just decided to watch it, so I can't do that. But I'm sure it'll just be as hilarious the second time round. Don't forget to be kind to yourself, be kind to each other. Admit, be kind. Admit when you don't know stuff. It's okay. Like, don't hassle people for not knowing the answers to stuff. I think we have a tendency to do that. We have a tendency to say, hey, you don't know something. It's like, well, yeah, they don't know, but that's good, because then they can find out. I think that sort of beating yourself up for not knowing everything is kind of, we do that a little, don't we? We sort of go in something, oh, I should have known this, I shouldn't know. There's a limit to what we can know. There's a limit to what we can learn. Knowledge and science is not, well, there's a guy out there that knows everything. No, we have to specialize. So let's defer to the people that do know, and be kinder to yourself when you don't know something. It's okay. But thank you very much. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.